Everyone's vacation photos hit the internet, and within hours, the future King of England wasn't calling his PR team. He was calling a private meeting. And he walked in carrying a thick folder of financial documents, court logs, and corporate records. No statement, no spin, just evidence. That single detail changes everything about what this story actually is. Because this isn't a royal scandal. It's a quiet power takeover, and it's already in motion. So the Queen Consort's yacht photos surface online, and the very next thing that reportedly happens isn't a tabloid frenzy or a palace press release. It's the Prince of Wales quietly calling a private meeting at his own residence, carrying a thick folder of financial records and port logs, essentially launching what multiple insiders are now describing as a palace audit in real time. That's the part of this story that's genuinely impossible to stop thinking about. Not the photos themselves, not the luxury yacht, but the fact that the future king apparently decided the best response wasn't a bland statement about private holidays. It was to show up with printed documents and start asking exactly who knew what and when. And if even half of what's being reported about that meeting is accurate, then what we're watching isn't just another royal controversy. It's something that looks a lot more like a quiet power shift, one that's been building for months and is finally becoming visible. Alright, let's get into the full timeline and all the contradictions that make this story so fascinating. The yacht in question is reportedly called the Esperanza 3, a Malta-registered vessel owned through a Luxembourg holding company, linked to a Switzerland-based financier. And right away, that detail matters. This wasn't some family friend's boat with clear ownership that anyone could look up in 5 minutes. The ownership structure was layered, multiple countries, multiple corporate entities. Now, technically, that's not unusual for super yachts. It's actually pretty standard in that world for tax and liability reasons. But when you're a senior member of the British royal family, an institution whose entire job description is maintaining public trust, accepting hospitality from an asset that's deliberately structured to be opaque is, let's call it, optically challenging. Even if nothing improper happened. Even if it was just a vacation. The problem isn't necessarily the trip itself. The problem is that this particular trip allegedly didn't appear in the royal family's published transparency records. And the trip was taken at a time when the Prince of Wales had reportedly been pushing for over a year for stricter internal guidelines about exactly this kind of situation. He reportedly wanted senior royals to avoid anything that could create even the appearance of favoritism or privileged access. That context is what makes everything else fall into place. Without it, the yacht trip just looks like a bad PR decision. With it, the yacht trip looks like someone either didn't get the memo or decided the memo didn't apply to them. Now let's talk about the timeline, because this is where things get genuinely strange. The trip allegedly took place in early July 2026. At almost exactly the same time, the Prince and Princess of Wales were doing the kind of grounded, bread-and-butter royal engagements that keep the institution looking connected to real people, visiting a children's hospice in Birmingham, meeting with veterans near Edinburgh. Very much the opposite of the French Riviera. And according to reports, the Prince of Wales learned about the Queen Consort's holiday before any photos ever made it to the press. Someone with knowledge of the trip allegedly contacted Kensington Palace directly, believing the situation was serious enough that the future king needed to know before it hit the newspapers. If that's accurate, then this story was never really exposed by a leak in the traditional sense. It was flagged internally by someone inside the circle, someone who thought the situation was serious enough to bypass normal channels. And that changes the entire nature of what happened next, because it means the Prince of Wales wasn't reacting to public embarrassment. He was reacting to information that reached him privately. This is also where a ship registry document becomes central to the story. And I know that sounds incredibly dry, but stay with it, because it's actually the key to understanding how this whole thing unraveled. According to the accounts, investigators were able to piece together the yacht's identity and location by cross-referencing a routine maritime registry record with a social media photograph that had been briefly uploaded and then deleted. That's it. That's the single thread that reportedly started pulling everything apart. A dry legal document and one photo someone tried to scrub from the internet. Once journalists had the yacht's identity, they could work backward. They could check port logs. They could identify other passengers. They could start asking questions about who owned the vessel and whether any of those connections intersected with royal charities or patronage organizations. And according to reports, that's exactly what they did. When you actually look at what was said versus what happened, the contradictions start stacking up fast. The Queen Consort's representatives reportedly described the trip as a private matter that didn't require public explanation. And in one sense, that's a perfectly reasonable position. Senior royals do take private holidays. But this particular holiday allegedly didn't appear in the royal family's published transparency records. And internal palace policies reportedly require certain gifts, hospitality, and benefits to be formally declared. So if the trip was just a normal private holiday, why wasn't it declared? And if it wasn't declared, was that because someone decided it didn't need to be? Or because declaring it would have raised exactly the kind of questions that eventually got raised anyway? Either the disclosure rules apply to everyone, or they don't. And if they don't, then what's the point of having them? Then there's the earlier trip. This is where the pattern starts looking less like a one-time oversight and more like an established habit. Reports claim the Queen Consort had vacationed on the very same yacht on a previous occasion, possibly as early as 2023, and that trip was also never officially declared. It was reportedly discussed privately within palace circles at the time, but no formal disclosure was ever made. So now we're not talking about one isolated decision. We're talking about what appears to be a repeated pattern of accepting hospitality from the same individual on the same vessel, with no record of it ever appearing in the transparency documents. If that's accurate, the Prince of Wales's frustration becomes a lot easier to understand. He wasn't responding to a single lapse in judgment. He was responding to what looked like a repeated habit that had been quietly accommodated for years. The meeting at Kensington Palace in mid-July 2026 is where the story reportedly takes its most dramatic turn. The details that have been reported are surprisingly specific. The Prince of Wales allegedly chose to hold the meeting at his own official residence rather than at Buckingham Palace. Symbolically, that alone sends a message about who's driving this conversation. He reportedly walked in carrying a printed folder containing financial records, port entry logs, lobbying disclosures, and a detailed summary of the earlier yacht trip. Not talking points. Not a vague list of concerns. Documents. The kind of preparation that suggests this wasn't a reactive moment. It was an investigation. He wanted to know who had known about the earlier trip, why that information had never reached the highest levels of the royal household, and what exactly the king had been told. According to the reports, one official admitted that concerns had been raised internally but couldn't explain why they hadn't been fully escalated. Another reportedly confirmed that the king had received only a basic overview of the Queen Consort's travel plans and allegedly hadn't been informed about the yacht owner's identity, the lobbying connections, or the financial relationships linked to the trip. If that's true, then the palace's internal reporting system had essentially filtered out the most sensitive information before it ever reached the king. And the Prince of Wales's reported conclusion was that the system had failed. Not that one person made a mistake. Not that the Queen Consort made a poor choice, but that the entire process for flagging potential issues was broken. From there, the Prince of Wales reportedly laid out 3 demands. First, a full written disclosure covering both yacht trips to be submitted to the King's principal private secretary within 7 days. Second, a thorough review of all of the Queen Consort's charitable patronages to identify any possible connections with outside donors. Third, an immediate suspension of all contact between the Queen Consort's household and the yacht owner while the matter was being examined. That third demand is particularly striking. It's not a request for more information. It's a directive, an action. And it strongly suggests the Prince of Wales wasn't just trying to understand what happened. He was trying to contain it. The pushback reportedly came through the king. The Queen Consort insisted she had never intended to mislead anyone. The king reportedly warned that launching a formal review would only generate more press coverage. And honestly, both positions make a certain kind of sense. The king's position is the pragmatic one. If you investigate, you validate the story and give it oxygen. The Prince of Wales's position is the institutional one. If you don't investigate, you signal that accountability doesn't actually matter. When the Queen Consort's office later submitted what was described as an incomplete disclosure, the Prince of Wales's team reportedly rejected it outright. And at that point, the disagreement stopped being private. It became an open clash between the office of the future king and the office of the Queen Consort. That's not a minor internal dispute. That's a structural rift. Now, let's talk about the yacht owner and the connections that have been reported, because this is where the story becomes more complicated than just the vacation itself. The vessel was reportedly owned through a complex overseas corporate structure, making it difficult to identify who ultimately funded the trip. One of the directors connected to the company was previously mentioned in a UK parliamentary report examining concerns about foreign influence in property-related matters. To be absolutely clear, that report did not accuse the individual of any crime. There has been no finding of wrongdoing, but the company was also said to have links with royal charities and heritage projects. So what you have is a situation where the same individual appears in multiple contexts: political donations, charitable connections to the monarchy, and private hospitality extended to a senior royal. Even if every single one of those things was completely above board, the overlap creates an appearance problem. And in an institution that runs entirely on public trust, appearance problems are real problems. The fallout, according to reports, has been gradual but hard to ignore. The Queen Consort's official calendar has reportedly become lighter. Several solo engagements were reassigned to other working royals. Her office reportedly underwent restructuring with a smaller team. Reports also claim her access to certain senior palace briefings became more limited. At the same time, the Princess of Wales has reportedly taken on a growing number of significant engagements, including some that had previously been associated with the Queen Consort. There was also a family weekend at Highgrove attended by the King, the Prince of Wales, and the Princess of Wales, at which the Queen Consort was reportedly absent. No official significance was attached to it, but commentators certainly noticed. Around the same time, the King attended a major film premiere without the Queen Consort, even though she had been expected to join him. The official explanation was a scheduling conflict, which may well be entirely true. But when you stack those data points together, lighter calendar, restructured office, missed appearances, limited briefings, they start forming a pattern that's difficult to dismiss. What's particularly striking is how the Prince of Wales has reportedly handled all of this. Not through public confrontation, not through leaks to friendly journalists, but through process, documents, deadlines, formal reviews. It's a fundamentally different approach from how palace scandals have been managed in the past. Royal commentators have pointed to the way previous situations were handled, including those involving the Duke of Sussex and the Duke of York, as examples of a consistent preference for dealing with sensitive issues quietly, systematically, and through institutional mechanisms rather than public drama. The Prince of Wales reportedly believes that lasting decisions should be made through careful planning rather than dramatic public statements. If that's accurate, then the yacht controversy was never really about punishing the Queen Consort. It was about establishing a precedent. The message isn't, you made a mistake. The message is, the system that allowed this mistake is going to change, and I'm going to be the one changing it. The longer-term implications of all this are genuinely significant for the future of the monarchy. The Prince of Wales is said to support a leaner institution, fewer working royals, stronger financial oversight, clearer governance, and stricter safeguards against conflict of interest. Royal commentators believe this vision was shaped in part by the lasting lessons of the 1990s, which demonstrated the real institutional dangers of secrecy and closed ranks protection. The idea is that transparency isn't just good public relations. It's a protective mechanism. If everything is documented and declared, there's far less room for the kind of speculation that slowly erodes public trust over time. If that's the vision the Prince of Wales intends to implement when he eventually becomes king, then what we're watching now is essentially the early rollout. The yacht controversy didn't create that vision. It just gave him an opportunity to demonstrate it. As for the Queen Consort, it's important to be clear. She remains Queen Consort. She still appears alongside the King at major state occasions. She retains all of her official titles. None of the reports suggest she has been stripped of any formal role. But what they do suggest is that her influence within the day-to-day operations of the institution has diminished, not through a dramatic removal, but through a quiet recalibration of who does what and who gets access to what information. And looking ahead, many royal experts believe the most significant changes would naturally come after the current reign ends. At that point, the institutional support tied to this era would shift, and the Crown's major responsibilities and assets would pass to the Prince of Wales. The extent of the Queen Consort's future public role would depend almost entirely on his vision for the monarchy. Based on everything that's been reported about his approach to governance, it's difficult to imagine that vision includes a prominent role for someone whose judgment has reportedly questioned this directly and this openly. Of course, all of this comes with a significant caveat. Much of what's been reported comes from unnamed sources and media commentary. Buckingham Palace has not confirmed confirmed the details of the Kensington Palace meeting, the reported demands, or the alleged restructuring of the Queen Consort's office. These are claims and interpretations, not established facts. But even with that caveat, the story carries real weight, because the contradictions are visible. The trip wasn't declared. The earlier trip wasn't declared. The ownership structure was deliberately opaque. The connections to charities and political donations existed, and the Prince of Wales's reported response, documents, deadlines, formal reviews, fits a consistent pattern of behaviour that has been observed across multiple situations over several years. Whether every reported detail is accurate or not, the broad outline is consistent with the direction the monarchy appears to be heading. What I keep coming back to is the folder. The image of the Prince of Wales walking into that meeting with printed documents, financial records, court logs, lobbying disclosures, because that's not the behaviour of someone who's simply annoyed about bad press. That's the behaviour of someone who has been waiting for the right moment to demonstrate, clearly and formally, how things are going to work from now on. And if the reports are even partially accurate, the message was received. The monarchy, according to these accounts, is evolving step by careful step. Not through abdications or public firings, but through the quiet accumulation of procedural changes that gradually shift who holds influence and who doesn't. The yacht photos may have triggered the conversation, but the conversation, it seems, was already long overdue. If you want to stay on top of how the royal institution is really changing beneath the surface, not just the headlines, but the decisions behind them, subscribe to UK Dispatch. We dig into the details that most coverage glosses over. See you in the next one.